So, you might have heard recently that Netflix has since dropped their casting for the new live action Avatar remake that begins shooting later this year. Even though it's been in pre production hell since it was announced in 2018, Netflix has every plan to move ahead with this project. And credit where credit's due, the cast certainly looks the part. I can't speak to their acting range since I've never actually seen them in anything. But in considering some of their past works, it seems like they have a good portfolio of working in streaming shows. If I'm being completely honest, I have been a little bit concerned with this show, considering the original showrunners Michael Dante DiMartino and Konietzko dropped out of the live action remake in August of last year, citing creative differences. Now, back when Netflix announced the project in 2018, they actually heavily promoted DiMartino and Konietzko's involvement in the remake, hiring them as executive producers and showrunners. Netflix even promised that they would honor their vision for this retelling and to support them on the series. In this really long post that DiMartino made last year when he dropped out, he says that whatever version ends up on screen, it will not be what Brian and I envisioned or intended to make. That's a huge yikes if you've asked me. Needless to say, DiMartino and Konietzko were also not involved with the Shyamalan adaptation, and thus it creates a concerning precedent for the success of these live-action adaptations. Now, it's a given that because it's a live-action retelling of the original series, it will be compared to the atrocity of the Shyamalan's 2010 adaptation, riddled with poor production decisions and a clash between independent creative choices and production requirements. Shyamalan's bleak and literally gloomy mess of a film was a big miss from the youthful vigor of the original series. Now, in the show, Aang may have technically been 112, but his 12-year-old personality was at the forefront of why the show was so popular. His innocent charm and childish sense of humor helped younger audiences navigate a war-torn world filled with persecution and propaganda and asylum seekers and radical soldiers. And this obviously did not translate well into the Shyamalan's interpretation, which dulled Aang's character into just a brooding adolescent boy. He had no charm whatsoever, and neither did the rest of the characters, which is a shame considering the original series had some of the most likable and charismatic animated characters of all time. As a general rule, anime or animated shows, if you'd like, have never really been able to be adapted into live action well. There are certain codes and conventions in anime, like the over-exaggerated facial expressions, the snappy humor, the pacing of action scenes that make it difficult to translate well. I mean, just look at Dragon Ball. So if you can't match the energy of the original series, you're better off taking the series in a different direction with a different tone. The Avatar franchise is one of the most expansive and one of the most interesting worlds in pop culture. It features such interesting lore and it has this backstory to it that is well developed, which obviously lends itself to a whole array of stories outside of the generic Avatar Aang storyline. In the series, a lot of one-off episodes features the gang meeting different groups of people or meeting different cities, and all of them have such unique and interesting storylines that you could easily explore in some kind of spin-off Netflix series. There are so many things I would literally rather see in a live action remake. Stuff like the Kyoshi Warriors, Ba Sing Se, Fire Nation Defectors, Jet and the Freedom Fighters, maybe even the Cabbage Merchant, I don't know. Hell, you could even talk about events that happened after Avatar Aang's series that leads up to Avatar Korra's storyline, stuff like the White Lotus, how they set up that city, maybe even searching for Zuko's mother. I don't know. I'm told there is a series of graphic novels that are supposedly canon. But yeah, there's plenty of material there that lends itself to a Netflix adaptation. And Netflix is known for being, edgy and gritty. So I don't see why they can't do something in that kind of line of work. If you're following the mixed career of the Star Wars franchise, producers have a much better rate of success telling individual spin-off stories within the vast world of Star Wars, as opposed to driving the sacred Skywalker storyline into the Tatooine dirt. Stories like Rogue One, the Clone Wars, recently with the Bad Batch or the Mandalorian as well. These stories have a much more interesting pull to it because fans like exploring the greater world of Star Wars. Whereas if you're just gonna do sequels or hell even remakes, you run the risk of ruining a storyline that fans already really enjoy and treasure a lot. Which brings me to another thing I feel is also important. Having come out around 15 years ago, oh my gosh, the original series came out 15 years ago. But yeah, most of its demographic, like me, are now well into adulthood and would probably count as mature audiences. Even then, the themes and plot behind the Avatar franchise is rooted in deeper themes of war and legacy that would be of greater appeal to mature audiences. Now, yes, Avatar The Last Airbender is technically a kids show. It was produced by Nickelodeon, a kids channel. It features bright, colorful aesthetics, fast-paced plots, and enough energy to match a kid on Mountain Dew. But its cultural significance in media, especially in considering its recent growth in popularity again, lies mostly with adults with a fond memory of the show and a deeper understanding of how events of Avatar mirrored real events of world history, which means they can now explore deeper plots because now they have an audience that is going to be a lot older. In considering that with its partnership with Netflix and the live action adaptation, you can do so much more with that. Talking about, I think it was 100 years that Aang was in the iceberg. You could talk so much about what happened within that 100 years. Now, I can't speak to whether the final product will be good or not. It very well may be. Even DiMartino doesn't know how the final product is going to turn out. But regardless, I can't help but be disappointed at just the wasted opportunity that Netflix is throwing away here. You have one of the most developed laws in pop culture with a strong and dedicated fan base and a source material that is just perfect from start to finish. And you decide to waste it on a remake of the same exact story just in, like Ultra HD 4K live action now. It's not worth it. I still think the original series holds up even now. The animation is perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. If you wanted to adapt it into live action with Netflix as well, you have so much potential there to tell a new story with new characters, with new themes, perhaps even with a more mature understanding of the world that Avatar Aang lived in. Just curious what you guys think of this. Do you guys think it would be good? Would you guys give it a shot, or is there any different stories you might be interested in hearing within the franchise? But yeah, it's not something that I'm particularly keen on in terms of the production choices they've made. I guess only time will tell.